think is going to benefit Trump in more ways than we can even realize. This is going to give the Trump team subpoena power and the opportunity to share all of their evidence in a federal court. This is something they've been trying to do for the past 2 years. I'm Stephanie Keith.
And I am Tara Manjekovic. And we are unapologetically outspoken. Hey everybody, welcome to Freedom Friday. I'm just going to apologize up front if I sound like shit because I feel like shit. So I may stumble on my words or not sound like I'm not making sense. So I'm just going to throw that out there that I'm sorry. But once again, there is like no lack of ridiculousness with the latest Trump indictment. And it's yet another weak case that I personally don't understand how the DOJ thinks they can prove anything, but we all know that we live in this two-tier justice system where the First Amendment only applies to the people in power, and they've made it very clear that they'll do anything to keep Trump from getting elected or even being eligible for election. Even Biden has publicly stated this, and this time, the indictment is alleging that Trump willfully made untrue claims that the 2020 election was stolen as an effort to remain in power, which in all reality is not alleged. It's fucking true. But the DOJ is alleging that Trump orchestrated a conspiracy against the US government. So now we're basically creating indictments that contradict freedom of speech and technically people's thoughts, but only for conservatives and specifically for Trump. Because let's be honest here, Hillary did the exact same thing when she publicly contested that Trump legitimately won the 2016 election. So with this logic, shouldn't she be indicted too? Because this seems like the same thing to me. And don't even get me started about all the actual treasonous shit Hillary's done. But basically, this in my mind is opening the door to punishing or penalizing anyone who defies or publicly disagrees with this administration's politics. And that's called communism. Don't you think, Stephanie?
Yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't just Hillary. It was all the Democrats that questioned the 2016 election. Remember how they would go around saying, not my president, not my president. It was so annoying. And then they did the same thing with the Bush election, where they actually wanted different electors, and it was a whole thing. So if Trump wins this next election, are they saying that it's a crime if they question it? Because they will. This is just further proof that there's two tiers of justice. And there's a lot of different perspectives on this whole Trump indictment thing. So let's start with the most obvious, which is the left and the mainstream media. They're talking about Trump like he is the biggest criminal of all time. Meanwhile, they don't think Biden did anything wrong by accepting bribes from, foreign countries like Ukraine and selling out our country. And I've heard people on the left talk about Trump saying he's committed multiple crimes. And of course, their standard line is the good old, he's a threat to democracy. But like you said, Tara, the real threat to democracy is the threat on our First Amendment right. And Vivek Ramaswamy gave a great statement about this. So I'm going to play a clip from him real quick.
The 45th president of the United States, Donald Trump, has yet again been indicted by the Biden DOJ, a political party in power that is now repeatedly using police force to indict and arrest and potentially eliminate its political opponents from competition. This is a politicized prosecution. It is a political persecution through prosecution, now in a third indictment just in a matter of months against the person who is still at present the lead contender in the Republican primary for U.S. president. I want to be very clear. I am running for U.S. president in that same Republican primary. It would be easier for me if Donald Trump were eliminated from competition. That's not how I want to win. This is not about politics to me. This is about first principles. We do not want to become a country where the party in power is able to use banana republic-like tactics to eliminate its political opponents. Yet I'm sad to say that's exactly where we are. The allegations in this indictment fall flat. It is wrong and incorrect and inaccurate. to place blame for what happened on January 6th at the feet of Donald Trump. I said this at the time. I've said it ever since then. I continue to say it today. I would not have made the same judgments that Donald Trump did in how he handled that day. But that's different from saying that he committed a crime. He did not. He specifically told the protesters that day to behave peacefully. The First Amendment in this country gives political protesters the ability to express themselves and their opinions freely. Donald Trump was not responsible for what happened on January 6th. You want to know what was responsible? I said this in the days after January 6, 2021, just as I say it today. Systematic, pervasive censorship.
Yeah. So again, like they're trying to censor free speech. And I tried to find the clip. I could not find it of Vivek on CNN, where the host was, running with the whole line that Trump is a criminal. And I mean, he's questioning the election. And he said, you should. Like, we have every right. Every single citizen in this country has a right to question an election that they think is fraudulent. And by saying that he's a criminal for doing so, you're directly going after the First Amendment. And Tara, you mentioned they have to prove that he had willfully made untrue claims about the election. Like, how the hell do you prove that? I mean, we all know he sincerely thinks he won, and so do half of Americans, maybe more at this point. I don't know how they're going to be able to prove that he willingly is lying. I mean, unless they have some kind of AI that can read his mind and read his thoughts. I mean, what the heck? How are they going to do this?
It honestly would not surprise me if they made that claim. And what I think is even scarier is I'm sure that there's technology like that already in the works. But I have to say that, like, the more Ramaswamy speaks out, the more I really like this guy. He is the only conservative candidate, or any candidate at all, who's taken a hard stance on supporting Trump. And like he said, he's competing against Trump to be the GOP nominee. And that totally takes balls. I think this guy has true integrity when it comes to the election process. Remember a few weeks ago when all the candidates were being asked by the media whether they would pardon Trump, and like none of the candidates had the balls to say anything solid in support of Trump. They either gave like vague answers, we'd have to see what happens or whatever. And Ramaswamy was the only one who was totally outspoken in stating he would pardon Trump if he was elected. And I love that he is suing the DOJ again and filing another Freedom of Information Act records request because he wants more detailed information about this indictment. And this is the second time he's suing the DOJ because he did the same thing back in June related to the criminal indictment against Trump for having classified documents, which again, two-tier justice because of the Biden classified document scandal, which, surprise, surprise, got conveniently like shoved under the carpet and no one even mentions it anymore.
Yeah, well, I really like him, and I think he is smart to back Trump and to do the right thing. And I think that that will pay off. Like, I could definitely see him being chosen as a cabinet member or something like that. But you're right. Like, he's the only one who is really boldly standing up for Trump in multiple ways. And this leads me to the next perspective, which is that this is really working out in Trump's favor. So, like, think about it. Every time they indict him, he surges in the polls, and they're just so damn obvious about what they're doing. And I'm actually going to play a clip from one of Trump's lawyers, Alina Hanna, that lays out the timeline of all of these different indictments. So let's take a listen to this.
This is the Biden political lawfare that we have seen time and time again. It is a deflection from everything that they have done. And if you don't believe me, look at the facts. On March 17th, Hunter accidentally admits that it was his laptop from hell. The next day, DA Alvin Bragg indicts President Trump. June 8th, an FBI document is released showing that the Ukrainians paid the Biden crime family millions and millions of dollars. The next day, the Mar-a-Lago raid and the Mar-a-Lago indictment. Last week, Hunter Biden's sweetheart plea deal fell through when the judge realized it had blanket immunity. The following day, a superseding indictment against Donald Trump. July 31st, Devin Archer goes to testify in front of the House. That was only after they failed to put him in jail prior to the fact. What happens the next day? The January 6th indictment that we're here for today. This is not a coincidence. This is election interference at its finest against the leading candidate right now for president, for either party. President Trump is under siege in a way that we have never seen before. President Trump and his legal team and everyone on his team will continue to fight, not for him, but for the American people.
Like literally the next day of each event, the very next day. So they're not trying to hide it. They're clearly trying to distract from the Bidens, but it's just so blatant that it really is revealing to the American public how corrupt the government and big media have become. And it's helping Trump win people over. People that didn't initially like him or they thought he was crazy or whatever are starting to see firsthand this government corruption. And I think that it is truly changing the minds of a lot of people out there.
Yeah. And if you look at the most recent polls, and frankly, like I have a difficult time believing that polls are accurate, depending on where they come from. And I just don't think they're usually a reflection of what the American people really want. But according to a New York Times Siena poll that was released on Monday, Trump is still way far ahead of all the other GOP candidates at 54%. The closest is DeSantis at 17%. Ramaswamy is at 2%. And then you have Mike Pence, Nikki Haley, and Tim Scott all at 3%. So it's a very obvious, huge lead for Trump. And then from the Democrat side, I read in the Epic Times, there was a poll last week from the Marquette, which I don't even know what that is. But it shows that Biden also has 54%, which I seriously find laughable at this point, which is why I don't believe in polls. It said RFK Jr. was at 14% and Marianne Williamson was at 6%. So either way, this still makes Trump the front runner for the GOP. And so the left is going to do anything they can to prevent him from being eligible.
Right. And this whole thing, I mean, it really is playing out in a way that I think is going to benefit Trump in more ways than we can even realize. Because the other thing to consider is that this is going to give the Trump team subpoena power and the opportunity to share all of their evidence in a federal court. This is something they've been trying to do for the past 2 years. So when the mainstream media has been reporting that there's zero evidence of election fraud, that's a lie. It's a lie because I've seen it laid out in a 14-hour hearing that there are thousands of statements, accounts from eyewitnesses, errors, and more that the MSM refused to report on. And now the Trump team can show these in a federal court to the American people as well. And with that being said, there is this theory going around that this whole thing is all a setup and that this Jack Smith is actually doing this to help Trump reveal all of this evidence. Now, I don't know that I'm buying into that because the background of this Jack Smith character, but I don't know. Like, do you think there could be some sneaky ulterior motive here where they're actually like trying to help Trump, or is it just work out that this is all benefiting him?
I think it's an interesting theory because he's the special counsel who's prosecuting Trump for the last 2 indictments. And he's been pretty outspoken about condemning the January 6th riots as an attack on, quote, American democracy. And he was appointed by Merrick Garland, who we all know is corrupt. But then 3 days ago, Jack Smith's team admitted to a federal judge that they made false statements in court during the classified documents case and that he failed to turn over all of the evidence to Trump's legal team. So I do think that would be quite the twist if this theory had any truth to it. But I want to address what you were saying. about the MSM refusing to report on it. Look at all the evidence that has been revealed in the Biden crime family scandal. And we're not seeing any of it on the MSM. And it's all shit that's being prosecuted in federal court cases. So do I think that this, with Trump's team having subpoena power, that they're going to be able to show all this evidence and people are going to care? Not unless people go outside of mainstream media for their news, because you can bet that the MSM is going to hold fast to their, relationship with the Biden administration and telling all these lies. And so is it going to make a difference?
I think it will, because I don't think that people are still tuning into the MSM. I think you have older people that are, which is why, we did that episode showing that there's more younger people turning conservative, because I think that the normal, like the podcasters and all the big, people on social media will get this out. And, they're not going to report on it, the mainstream, but I do think it's going to get the attention of more and more people through these other means. And I don't know, it's like this Jack Smith and Briggs and all these people, I just find it really strange that they're setting all these precedents that are going to come back to bite them in the ass for the Democrat Party. So it's like, I've kind of thought that before, like, what is the end game here? Are they really that stupid that they're just trying to get this short-term win? Or is there some bigger picture that we're not seeing here? So I don't know, but the last perspective is just, like the mainstream Republicans, we can call them, who are basically, just saying that this is what's going to happen. It's going to get appealed. It's going to go to the Supreme Court, and they're going to throw it out because these indictments are totally bogus and they're clearly a threat to our First Amendment right. So again, like any way you look at it, I feel like it's playing right into Trump's hand. And Trump gave a quick statement to reporters yesterday saying that this was never supposed to happen in America, where a political opponent is persecuted. He said he's leading in the Republican Party and beating Biden. And when you can't beat him, you persecute him and prosecute him. And Tara, he is absolutely right.
Yeah, I agree with that. But it's like, I do think that all of this propaganda and false information that's been revealed over the past year has opened a lot of people's eyes to what's going on in the country, despite the MSM still going with the Biden narrative. But if you look at the timeline of how Trump seems to conveniently get indicted for something every time new damning information comes out about the Biden crime family, and you don't see how blatantly this administration is trying to cover up their own corruption, then I'm sorry, but you deserve to live in communism and experience what it's really like. And then maybe you'll understand what America is about.
I feel like that needs to be a prerequisite for anyone who is like pro-socialism, pro-communism. You should have to go and spend at least, a year in one of those countries. And I guarantee these people wouldn't last a month. So no, they totally deserve what's coming. But I just feel it. I can see it. More and more people are becoming aware. And I remember a few months ago, I thought that everyone had their mind made up about Trump. You either love him or you hate him. No one's mind is going to be changed. Well, I go back on that now because I have seen so many people open their eyes just listening to these podcasters and like seeing the evidence that's right in front of their faces and putting the dots together and figuring out what's really happening. And I think every single indictment is just further proof that there's a lot of corruption going on and we need to get rid of it. So we'll see. We'll keep everyone posted. But again, I think that this is going to just help him in every way possible. I don't think it's going to hurt him. And worst case scenario, like it'll end up at the Supreme Court and they're going to throw it out. So those are my thoughts on it. We'll keep everyone posted because like this is the only thing in the news right now since they don't want to cover anything else. So we'll be back on Monday. I hope that everyone has a great weekend and thanks for tuning in. If you're sick of all the crazy shit going on in our country and you want to express your support and patriotism for the show, head on over to our Etsy store at UO Patriot Chicks and check out our new stickers. The link can also be found on our website. If you love the show and you want exclusive episodes, support the podcast and join the conversation by becoming a member of our Patreon community. We'll be posting weekly member-only podcast episodes and content that isn't available on the weekly podcast. Every Patreon member will also get a free Unapologetically Outspoken sticker and updates about our new sticker release before they're made public. And be sure to follow us on TikTok at Unapologetically Outspoken. And if you haven't done so already, please rate and review the podcast. The more you support us, the more people we can reach. So help us spread the word.